Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. No, I'm not wearing the same shirt 2 days in a row. I just recorded this a couple hours after the last one you watched yesterday. And today I want to hit you guys with a bit of theory crafting and talk about characters that we used to have that we're probably never going to get again. It's an interesting one, but before I start, I do want to thank you guys for all of your continued comments in the last kind of week's worth of videos. I know I hit you guys up with that promise of more roasting, and it will be coming soon when I get back to Canada, but I just want to say that even though I haven't reminded you guys in every video, the fact that you've been consistent with it is fantastic. Side note, for all of you morons that are posting multiple times in one video, I'm just going to delete all of your comments, so you're actually just wasting your time. But thanks anyways. Moving on to the actual topic of today's video, I want to talk about dual type characters. Now, I want to talk about dual typing not only in terms of characters having multiple types, as in combat and speed, or blast and universal, but also in having different types in terms of male, female, or hero, villain. So a perfect example would be someone like Kingpin, who is originally a combat character, but when you get his uniform, you can change him into a blast character. Now, he remains a villain, but that is one of the type of dual characters that I'm talking about. There are also characters that change from villain to hero and vice versa, and so there's lots of different examples that you can find in-game of characters who do some sort of transformation when they get a uniform. It's basically every single time it is a uniform. We've never had a character change from hero to villain or vice versa as a base reflection of their rework. I mean, every rework character has stayed the same in those senses, so that is not something to think about. But in terms of uniforms, we have multiple examples of characters who are changed from past updates, from years ago in some cases. In a lot of cases, actually, it's from years ago. So this is where the original idea spawned, because I was thinking about these characters. Frankly, I was hoping for reworks for characters like Vision and Kingpin and Hulk even, and then I started to think, well, we've had more recent uniforms where we kind of hoped certain characters would change. For example, Ronan is considered a villain from Guardians of the Galaxy, the movie, the MCU movie, and if you're a casual Marvel fan, you're like, yeah, Ronan's definitely a villain. He's a bad dude. But if you read the comics thoroughly enough, he's not really a bad guy. He has bad guy moments, but he also has plenty of good guy moments, and he also finds himself on the side of the good guys, siding with, teaming up with the Guardians of the Galaxy on multiple occasions. So we've seen instances where characters have gotten uniforms, and there's been hype in the community hoping that perhaps there would be a change for the character's alignment in terms of villain to hero and vice versa, or that there would be a change in their typing. Another really good example is a lot of you guys predict, or at least hope for, you throw out into the universe, oh man, I really want Jean Grey to get her Dark Phoenix uniform. I really want Jean Grey to be a villain. Now, I don't mean to be the villain of your hopes and dreams, huh? Pun intended, but I don't think that's ever going to happen again. Hear me out. There is some justification for this. Netmarble makes less money, and Netmarble has less content in the game the more that they create characters or uniforms like Kingpin's Secret Wars uniform, like Vision's Age of Ultron uniform. So while they made these uniforms in the past, I would personally call these mistakes. And I think that these are mistakes that they're not going to repeat very much anymore. I think if it's a certain situation like Anti-Venom, where it's very obvious that it has to be a hero versus being a villain, as the original Venom is, and even then, Venom's not always a villain. But anyways, even then, I think that they're going to actively avoid as much as possible the idea of these kinds of transcendent uniforms that allow these giant shifts in terms of male to female, female to male, Loki, Captain America, or you have your hero to villain, villain to hero, and then the typing changes, because most notably, not exclusively, but most notably, it affects Alliance Battle Extreme. And I know a lot of you guys don't play Alliance Battle Extreme competitively, but I can say without a doubt that it is one of the money-generating game modes for Netmarble, and it's one of the game modes that they used to pick on or kind of target with updates a lot, and they would use that as a vehicle as a way, as kind of an engine to generate more revenue, because all of the top alliances, they have to spend money to stay at the top alliances, whether they're spending money to buy crystals to roll more obelisks, or they're buying crystals to buy cards to improve their cards, or they're just purchasing crystals to switch their obelisks around. That still happens, and it happened a lot back in the day, where you'd have characters that would double dip, and they would be available for multiple different game modes, but they would require slightly different obelisks in order to be successful. And that is part of the reason why back in the day, I know how it sounds, but back in the day, Kingpin got this uniform so that he could double dip, and he could be on the blast day as well as the combat day. And it's probably, surprise to not too many people, the same reason why Deathlock got a very similar uniform, because he was the leadership of choice for Kingpin back in the day. And so we saw these things, and I saw it developing, and I was quite heavily against it. I thought it was wrong to do things like give Kid Kaiju a uniform, and then the very next update introduce Spider-Man 2099. And he's clearly a better speed hero, and he gets a higher score in ABX than Kid Kaiju. And so all of those top alliances, I'm talking, the top 20 or the top 30 alliances multiplied by 40 players. So you can see how many hundreds of players that is. You're reaching thousands of players eventually, who are following those character developments, and who are just going from update to update, spending money to get crystals, to max uniforms, to unlock new paywall characters, etc., just so that they can push and keep themselves at the top of the ABX scores, so that they can not only get the prestige, but then they can also compete in the Alliance Tournament. The Alliance Tournament is very old, guys. It's been in the game for over a year. It's got a lot of history, and so, I mean, more than 2 years, actually. It's been in the game for a long, long time. 52 weeks times 2. It's in its 3rd year already. So, it's older than some game modes that we've come to expect. I think it's older than Shadowland. It's definitely older than, Conquest and all this kind of stuff. And so that was the situation, and that's not really the case anymore. We definitely still have updates from time to time that appear to be targeting Alliance Battle Extreme. Cable is a really good example. His design was almost entirely made for ABX specifically, and his uniform only furthered that idea with the chain hit damage. I mean, there's no other reason to give him that other than to make it easier to score 2 million. But it's a different kind of design now, and it's not an insidious design. It's not a design made to move the carrot. We used to be donkeys, okay? So picture the Netmarble CEO, that's me, wearing the glasses, and I'm riding you. You're the donkey, and I've got a stick. I mean, I got a stick. Well, I'm holding a stick, and on the end of the stick, there's a rope, and then on the rope, there's a carrot. And so I'm just moving the carrot further and further along. I'm trying to do this without hitting my microphone. By just introducing patch after patch, month after month, new ABX characters. You know that ABX character from 6 months ago? Now they got a uniform. Haha, so on and so forth. That's not really the case anymore. But with that old practice of doing that, with that old practice dying, we've also seen the practice of changing characters' alignments, changing characters' typings, pretty much die as well. I mean, I can't really think of a character in the near future that is going to get a uniform like that, and I would personally bet that it's probably going to happen less than 3 times over the next year's worth of patches. So my prediction right now, and you can write it down, you can bookmark this video, is in 2019, however many updates we get from Marvel Future Fight, I mean, 1 per month would say about 12 updates, give or take. Over the next 12 updates, we'll get 3 or fewer uniforms that change a character's alignment, or that change a character's gender, or that change a character's typing. Unless something really outrageous happens in the MCU, or something really important happens in comics, where they really want to push some sort of new comic series in Marvel Future Fight, as we've seen with things like Infinity Warps. I really doubt that we're going to see that. And on the one hand, it is good because we don't have as much pressure on those specific competitive players to pay money, and it feels more honest in the way that they're asking us for money. On the other hand, it is a bit disappointing because, you know what, I do want to see certain changes. I would love to see a hero uniform for MODOK, as hilarious as hilariously backwards as that would be. I would like to see, you know, possibly neutral uniforms for certain characters to build off of the enjoyment of having a neutral character like Destroyer who's neither a villain nor a hero. They could even introduce the anti-hero tag and kind of play around with that and have it weaker against villains but stronger against heroes or something like that. They could have, of course, we've already talked about it, but seriously, it would be super cool, a villain Jean Grey uniform. But personally, given the history of the game and given how I see things have evolved and adapted, I don't see it being very likely. So that does put us in a place where we have to look for new avenues to be creative because we've lost that outlet. Now, I do think what they can do, if they do decide to make those types of uniforms again, it is a possibility, they would probably scale back the power level of those characters. So again, I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I don't actually work for Netmarble, but there is a possibility that they could give her Jean Grey a uniform that makes her a villain, but it wouldn't scale her damage up the way you expect it to. So she may still be a dominant force for PvP, but it would basically remove her from PvE top contention permanently. Kind of in the way that Thanos' uniforms have done that. They've consistently worked on making him stronger and stronger for PvP, but they haven't really pushed his envelope, his potential for PvE. And so he's kind of solidified his role as top 1, top 2 PvP characters in the game, but he's basically presumably never going to be top for PvE content, and that's okay, because now that's his role. And I've kind of predicted that now and then, casually, talking to people on Twitch about certain characters that revive, like Corvus, Jean Grey, Adam Warlock, Dormammu, more recently Morgan Le Fay. It's possible that Netmarble wants to take that tag of reviving and make it just for PvP characters and not necessarily a PvE thing, just to try to balance the game out a little bit more. So I do welcome that as a possibility where we can still retain the creativity and the flexibility of those kind of, you know, reality-bending uniforms. I'm Blast, now I'm Combat, I'm Speed, now I'm Universal, without making the character super powerful. I'm okay with that. I think we would just probably hope for, as I always say, a new game mode that allows us to use some of these characters with a bit more meaning, like a Shadowland 2.0 or a 1 versus 1 PvP scenario where you lock in specific characters and you get specific points for them to really make use of this gigantic bloated roster, this Noah's Ark type thing that we have going on here in Marvel Future Fight. I want to love every single one of these characters as much as I love Deadpool or Wolverine or Ant-Man, but it's hard to when I don't have the opportunity to play these characters. So I think ultimately that discussion leads down to just give me a place to play these characters, man. I don't care if they're that strong. But in the meantime, I wanted to pass that piece of theory crafting on to you guys. I wanted to ask your opinion. What do you think of it? What do you think of my prediction? And which of these uniforms that may or may not be coming out for these characters do you think could reasonably buff the characters without making them too strong, and also while maybe breaking some of the rules that I've indicated Netmarble may be using, i.e. no more uniforms that change gender, no more uniforms that change hero to villain, etc., and no more type-changing uniforms. So let me know what you guys think of the idea. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.